Tonight on Real to Real, we welcome Cardinal Krol for a very special personal interview. We'll help the Cardinal with his birthday candles in a surprise celebration. Joe O'Neill will join us with his video review of The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, and we hike to Cadiz Island Park to meet Sean O'Rourke, chief naturalist, who shows us the hidden wonders of this creation. That's all tonight on Real to Real. Hello, I'm Monsignor Charles Meinong.
And I'm Pat Shelton. Welcome to a very special edition of Real to Real. I like movies that tug at my heart and play with my emotions. And if you enjoy this kind of film also, then you'll probably enjoy tonight's vintage video.
And I know you'll enjoy very much our special guest, John Cardinal Krol. It's been a great privilege to interview him before, but none like tonight. And I know you'll enjoy meeting him again with me. The buzzword these days around the country, especially in the United States, has been environment. We have all kinds of protests and political problems about it, and it's necessary we become interested in it and understand it. You see, the whole idea that Sean O'Rourke gives us in Cadiz Island, New Jersey, is God did have special ways of developing things, and a balance is there. So what Sean reminds us very carefully about is that our job is to restore the balance that God put in nature in the first place.
When God created the universe, the world was a desolate, chaotic mass. He gathered the water beneath the sky into oceans, so that dry land would emerge. He named the dry land earth, and the water seas. Then he said, "Let the earth burst forth with every sort of grass, seed-bearing plants and trees." And he saw that it was good.
I see God in every single natural thing there is. That life force that's there is a representation of God being there. We may be the only being that actually has the choice about what we're doing, but this everything around us is living and alive, and the loss of any one of those things is a small loss of that life force. I think God is in every single thing we look at and is around us. He surrounds us all the time.
God created man and woman and entrusted the whole of creation to their care. Made in his image and likeness, man and woman were to have exercised their sovereignty over the earth with wisdom and love. As the chief naturalist of Cadiz Island in Ocean County, New Jersey, Sean O'Rourke knows that if we don't learn about nature, we'll never understand the world around us and the importance of the responsibility over natural life that God has entrusted to our care.
Cadiz Island is one of the parks in Ocean County that are set aside as a natural area. The natural area here is for wetlands. We have a salt marsh in this park. About 70% of the park is salt marsh. We're in a red maple and cedar swamp where we are here. This is on the edge of the salt marsh, and about 20% of the park is this. Many plants have learned to survive here in the shade underneath the taller trees of the wetland. Some of the plants here are very interesting. This particular moss here is a sphagnum moss. Sphagnum moss was used by Indians. It turns out that this is aseptic. It actually kills germs. So literally the Indians had the first diaper rash preventative, because between absorbing the moisture and killing the germs, the papoose never had a diaper rash. Some other plants that we have growing in here, grasses and sedges, have learned to adapt and live in places where nothing else can grow. These are the first plants to grow over areas that are rather slimy and muddy. The slimy, muddy areas along this wetland have a tremendous amount of bog iron and natural organic acids coming out of the ground, caused by all the leaves and twigs and stems and plants rotting away after they've died. Now here's a plant that enjoys this kind of area. It's called the liverwort, a very, very low growing plant, almost no stem at all to it. And you can see it's in a very, very wet environment. And this is one of the first things that would pioneer an area such as this. Of course, after all this stuff gets started, the cedar forest itself gets going. Cedar forests are typical wetland forests in South Jersey. Our cedar forest is a remnant forest along the coastal zone. Most of the cedar forests along the coastal zone are slowly being taken over by salt water as sea level slowly rises. And sea level rising increases the amount of salt tide coming into this area. It doesn't look like it's a saltwater area right now, but during major storms we literally have this area covered with salt water. These trees have been able to survive because of the tremendous amount of fresh water coming out of the ground. However, given time, they're going to die, and I'm talking over 100 or so years. They're going to die and be replaced by other plants, the salt marsh plants. Unfortunately, sometimes man, in his attempt to get the cedars out, doesn't cut the trees down right. And when he does that, instead of cedar trees replacing what was cut, Unfortunately, red maples and sour gum trees replace it. These are all wetland plants too. They're not as important to us or to the natural environment as the cedar trees, but the red maples and sour gum trees are hardwood trees that lose their leaves in winter. Sometimes these interlopers move in where the salt water has killed the cedars off too, but usually in New Jersey, unfortunately, it's just that people have been there before nature had a chance to do the job for them. Salt marsh is one of the most productive habitats on Earth. This particular marsh here, an acre of it, is equivalent to 10 acres of farmland in its productivity. Where I'm standing is the edge of the marsh, and there's some sedges and things that would grow along this area, and reed grasses that grow. The edge of the marsh, if you look out on the island, goes up rather steeply. The island plants grow right to an edge and stop. And all you see is some grasses growing out in front of it. And to the average person, it looks like it's all the same kind of grass until you get down into the marsh and start looking at it. 70% of the small fishes that live in our salt waters near us require these salt marshes to survive. Oh, I just heard a kingfisher fly by. Birds and animals are attracted to the salt marsh because of all these fishes that are living here. And by the fishes using it as a feeding area, the birds in turn use it as a feeding area. We have kingfishers here, and great blue herons, and egrets, and all kinds of birds are attracted to the salt marsh to feed. In the evenings, mammals are attracted to the marsh. Wetlands are rather a unique area. The plants that live here have not only adapted to living in a very wet environment, but they've also adapted to salt. They have to have special ways of moving salt through their bodies, through their stems, and keep the salt from building up inside their systems and killing them like a poison. There's only 19 plants living in New Jersey that can live on this salt marsh, and out of that there's only 3 or 4 that are actually very, very common. Those meadow haze and salt marsh grasses break down and form a thing called detritus. The detritus is the base of the food chain for the salt marsh, and that's that black mucky stuff that the microorganisms will feed on, and in turn be fed on by larger and larger animals. But anyway, this kind of grass we're in here is extremely important to that detritus. There's grasses that move into salt marshes occasionally when man interferes with them. One of them is called the reed grass. The reed grass doesn't form detritus. The reed grass doesn't break down. As a matter of fact, the reed grass takes so long to break down that when the Egyptians ran out of papyrus to write on, they would have used reed grass. They found reed grass in Egyptian tombs thousands of years old. Man finds use for the wetlands without even being in them. The wetlands act as a buffer for flooding and coastal events involving storms. There's small clumps of plants growing out on there. You might see a few bushes or shrubs growing here and there. Those are growing in areas that were affected by man. At one time they did a lot of mosquito ditching here, and when they dug the ditches, they threw the dirt right alongside of the ditch. It raised the marsh 2, 3, 4 inches, and that was enough to allow bushes called high tide bush to get started. Nowadays, when they do the mosquito ditching, they have to spread the dirt out. They've done some ponding in here involving this new way of doing things, and in spreading the dirt out, they flatten it down, get it to the same level as the original marsh, so that these same kinds of marsh grasses can grow. This area here 5 years ago looked like a large mud hole from all the digging that was done. Now, it's all cleaned out, the grasses have all grown back in, and it looks just like as if nothing happened. I worry about salt marshes disappearing over time. Frequently, I've seen many cases where when it's a choice between a natural environment and something people need, the people will always win out. And I hope that through people learning more about their natural world, they'll appreciate the fact that some areas have to be protected. In the future, as time goes on and more housing gets built in our suburbs area, the only areas that are going to be green are the little parks that we're putting aside now.
Next time you pass a marshland or a meadow, don't be bored. Look at it. It's very full of life, Pat.
And to pass this particular marshland, Caddis Island, you'll find it just north of Toms River, New Jersey. Tonight, Joe O'Neill has picked another winner. What else? It's full of heart and sensitivity, and it stars Alan Arkin, and it's destined to be vintage video.
Alan Arkin stars as a sensitive deaf mute named John Singer in a movie from 1968 called The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. His character touches the lives of the people he meets, trying to ease their loneliness. The tragedy of The Heart is a Lonely Hunter is the silent loneliness John Singer feels. In his deaf world, he is alone. Although John reaches out to so many as a friend, his internal isolation spreads a personal sadness across him. John's handicap inhibits the ability of others to share with the man. Who do you know who needs to be given hope because of physical or personal problems? How often do you take time out of your busy day to listen to a friend who is going through a rough time right now? A scene from The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. A teenage girl named Mick, feeling the pangs of adolescence, tries to share her joy for classical music with John Singer, played by Alan Arkin.
The beginning. This part that's on now. Now it's slow and solemn. Like old ladies when you see them walk into church. Oh, now a horn comes in here. A horn. Yeah, but it sounds like the sun feels on a hot day when you don't have a hat on. Oh, and everything's so much faster now. Each part has a different speed, you see. Yet it all fits together somehow. Dum-da-dum-da-dum. It's like water running downhill. Like the leaves are. You know, the leaves just before it starts to rain when the wind blows them all upside down. You ever seen that? Now all the instruments are playing together. It's as if they were dancing. Some of them to one tune, some to another, but it all works. They're all part of one beautiful thing. Oh, I wish I could make you hear. No, not like that. I mean, really hear. That's very good. The record's over now.
Together, their personal loneliness eases because of the sharing process. Do the same for a friend of yours who might need it too. The Heart is a Lonely Hunter is available on Warner Home Video. The United States Catholic Conference rates the movie fine entertainment for adults and adolescents. This is Vintage Video. I'm Joe O'Neill.
Thanks, Joe. And that's some of Alan Arkin's very best work. And now you watch some of these very fine commercials, and we'll meet tonight's special guest.
The circle comes together in our hearts. Every step we take's a brand new start. This road we walk in friendship leads us to a world at peace, and the circle comes together in our hearts.
Join the crop walk for the hungry in your community. You're part of the circle too.
And the circle comes together in our hearts.
A message from Church World Service.
The Catholic League for the Orthopedically Handicapped is having its 28th annual Communion Mass and Luncheon on Sunday, November the 4th. At 12:30 p.m., Mass will be celebrated by Monsignor Charles Devlin, Vicar for Philadelphia North, in the Lower Church of St. William's Parish, 6200 Rising Sun Avenue in Philadelphia. A luncheon will follow at 2 p.m. in St. William's Memorial Hall. For more information, call 215-836-9381.
Happy 80th birthday, Cardinal Krol.
To call him Archbishop Emeritus is to give him a title, but to call him Cardinal Krol, we give him the name Bishop, Priest, Friend, Man of our Life. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
It's so nice to have you with this special birthday. And I'd like to talk about birthdays. My family, we never had much celebration. There were no gifts exchanged. Once, if you happen to be home for ice cream and cake, you got that. But generally, not much gift sharing. How about your family celebration of birthdays? What do you remember back to the family years?
I remember nothing.
Really?
No, the first so-called birthday I had was in 38. The feast day was the big.
Oh, you celebrated name days in your family tradition. We Irish never got into that, but I know the Italiani did. I didn't know that the Polish descent people did the name days as well.
The feast day was the important.
Mm-hmm. How about your father? You always love to talk about your father, and this is a great memory for me. I know it's a great memory for you. Well, often you have talked about your father and his influence in your life.
Well, he was an interesting character. He had a great deal of humor. He enjoyed life, and we enjoyed it with him.
How about your brothers and sisters? Are there many?
Well, there are 8 of us starting, 3 of us surviving.
And where are they? All in Cleveland?
No. One is in Parma, which is west of Cleveland. One is in Van Wert, which is near the Indiana border.
One of the big things that we talk about, and now that I'm back at the seminary again, we talk about the vocation promotion. And I guess you and I both have great resourcefulness for our vocational aspects in the family. We used to be teased by one of our teachers at the seminary years ago. Why are you here? Does your mother want to preach to a family? Would you have any recollections of vocation development or promotion that you would have in your family?
No, I had a sister who, in God's grace, recognized her vocation at the age of 15, and she died before she was 30. By contrast, I resisted any effort at promotion of my own to the priesthood. As a matter of fact, I worked as a master meat cutter for a couple of years after graduating high school, and then reversed my field. And
What got into you from the butcher block to the seminary?
Pardon?
What got into you from the butcher block to the seminary?
Well, it was a Lutheran gentleman who did a great deal of reading, was interested in religion, asked me whether I knew my religion, and of course, having had 8 years of elementary and 4 years of Catholic high school, I says, of course I know my religion. Who could know it better? And he says, can you talk about it without getting emotional? I says, of course I can. Who says I get emotional? He threw about 4 questions at me. And he irked me no end. I wasn't able to answer a single one of his questions. But he had read so much. Nevertheless, from that point on, I began to do some more reading and more reflection, and came to the conclusion that a straight line was the shortest distance between 2 points, and came home one day and told Mother that I was quitting my job. She thought I didn't make any sense because she hadn't labeled me for a vocation, and told me to talk to my brother Al, who's 12 years younger. She thought that's how much sense I made. But I tried, and I got by.
You made it. You obviously made it well. What became of Al?
Pardon?
What became of Al, your younger brother?
Al is the father of 5 sons.
So he didn't get to the seminary. So you didn't do what your mother told you.
No.
In the life we have around us today, we do so much pro-life talk and anti-abortion talk. I often wonder if we shouldn't really pursue vocational aspects for babies. to get parents to think about the future of their infants?
Well, I'm getting a little tired of this pro-life, pro-choice. You'd think that some people had a vocation to do nothing other than to destroy life. And there's so much of that, the Planned Parenthood and the pro-lifers, pro-choicers. But of course, it's euphemistic. Who would deny anybody the right of making a free choice on anything with due respect for the rights of another? But a pro-lifer or a pro-choice doesn't give anybody the right to destroy someone else. And you have so much of that, it's getting a little tiresome. And regrettably, there are people in the media who seem to have thrown their weight behind all of this, and it's sickening in a way.
In the years you've had now, do you think this is a tougher thing to deal with than any other, say, adventures that happened in the past? Media makes so much today of the pro-life, pro-choice.
I think, for example, if you look at Philadelphia, I came here when I was 50. In that time, we've had the beatification of John Neumann, the canonization of John Neumann, the beatification of Catherine Drexel, people who are our neighbors being raised to the altar. You have, we had the Holy Father here, we had the International Eucharistic Drive. All of these are tremendous features. In the time that I had tenure, because of the goodness of the priests, religious and laity, we started 36 new parishes, even though the archdiocese had been halved.
Yes.
You'd say, well, they should have enough. But there were 36 new parishes. We had 4 Newman Club centers, apostolates. We have a Don Guanella School for boys and the one for girls, the likes of which you will not find on this continent, that is taking care of the handicapped, of the poor. We have, for example, accepting the reality that none of us is absolutely perfect, we are the only archdiocese on this side of the Atlantic that has a certified hospital for psychiatry for priests, for nuns. We are not free of the normal weaknesses of human beings. We've started 6 new high schools. All of this has been going on.
And what I would say to you then, most times we look at giving people gifts for their birthday, but in this your 80th birthday, look at the gifts you've given us. How can we thank you for all these great gifts you've given up by your direction?
I have given you nothing that you didn't give. Actually, I say it's the people. I have very deliberately kept my name off of buildings, schools, and so on, because
almost
I was I may have been the organizer, but the wherewithal came from the people, from the priests, from the religious. So, well, there was one exception. I was the CK Center, which is the graduate school of the Don Guanellas.
That's
the father there, whom I like very much, and they are tremendously efficient, had asked me to bless the new place, and it was called the CK Center. And I had a little suspicion. I says, what's the CK stand for? He says, this is the Feast of Christ the King.
But it's Cardinal Krol.
Yeah.
And we want to thank you, Eminence, for
And,
giving us the great privilege of pushing for life as you have. You've helped us to come alive.
So he
Thank
calls it the Christ the King Center until I turned my back, and then he called it the Cardinal Krol. That wasn't with my approval. But he's the type of a priest who comes into the office, cleans it out, including the gold filling in your teeth and in your pocketbook if you have anything, and makes you say thank you and walks off. Everybody's happy.
Well, I have to say thank you now, Eminence.
I've always wanted to be like my brother. Just to hang around Eric, Noel, and me. Then things started to change. Everybody told me he was on drugs. I couldn't believe it. Not my brother. But it was true. Drugs killed my brother.
Pardon me, how often do you go to church?
Well, I haven't lately.
Before 3 nuns and a lay worker were found murdered in El Salvador.
I'm usually on the golf course.
Well, the South African police disrupted funerals again today.
Well, I try to make it on the holidays.
In an Istanbul synagogue, terrorists opened fire, killing.
I can't remember the last time I went.
Religious freedom. A message from your Catholic neighbors.
We welcome your comments, suggestions, and donations and encourage you to write us at Reel to Reel, St. Charles Seminary, 1000 East Wynwood Road, Overbrook, PA 19096, or call us during regular business hours at 668-9842.
We have given so much, Your Eminence, to us. We'd like to give you one more surprise. And so we have a gift for you. Not really a gift, but you have to share it. And so a happy birthday from all of us, from Reel to Reel, all of us in the studio, on this, your birthday, your 80th. God bless you.
Happy
Adultos Anos.
birthday.
Well, isn't that lovely?
We're glad you like it.
Yes.
And we hope you like it too. And please, would you keep His Eminence in your prayers for his good wishes in this birthday. We owe him so much. It's the greatest gift you can give him, the one he appreciates most. So good night now, and God bless you.
Good night.
Like an 8-pound cake, but I don't.
Birthday card.
I don't bother.
Here we go, Your Eminence, with the
Shoebox greeting.
Shoebox. That's the latest thing, the shoebox greetings. There you go.
See, that's what happens when you get old.
You can do it.
Travel arrangements for Reel to Reel by Atkinson and Mullen, Newtown Square, PA, 215-359-5980.
We have often used these 30 seconds to talk about the Young Adult Prayer Group.
That's because we would like every young man or woman, single or married, 18 to 35, to come and experience the power of God in our midst.
We meet this coming Saturday and every fourth Saturday of the month at Presentation BVM, 204 Haverford Road, Penwyn, Pennsylvania.
So if you're 18 to 35, single or married, come on out to Presentation School in Penwyn.
If you need directions, just call 215-668-HOPE.